Hi, I'm Jude, and today I'll be showing you how to make a delicious broccoli and rice dish in about 20 minutes for under $4. First things first, we're going to want to go over some of the materials or some of the utensils we're going to need to use in today's recipe. So first thing we're going to need for the rice is we'll need a pot and a lid. Next, what we'll need in order to cook the broccoli properly is a saucepan and a lid. And the lid is going to be pretty important here, but if you don't have one, it's not the end of the world. Next, we'll need a measuring cup or a measuring cup. We'll need a knife. I prefer the big ones, but I understand not everybody has a chef's knife, so we'll use a small one today. Alright, we're going to need our broccoli. I have 3 heads today, about 2.5 pounds, and we're also going to need our rice. Okay, these are the main ingredients. I like to buy my food at the farmer's market. It's a lot cheaper there, and I like to get my rice from the Patel brothers over at Patel Plaza near Emory. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pot, we're going to take off the lid, and we're going to take our measuring cup or a measuring cup. But personally, I like to use the coffee cup. I'm going to take my water and fill 2 coffee cups worth of water and just pour it straight into the pot. Now we're going to set this on the stove and let it boil. Now that we've got our water boiling, I'm going to go ahead and cut up the broccoli. There's no use in wasting time when it comes to cooking. What I'm doing here is I'm just cutting off the very end of the stem because this is a little bit tough and it's not the best thing to eat. Alright, and I'm going to save these for later. I actually have a bin where I put all of my vegetable scraps for stock. Next, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to cut off these little tiny trees off of the broccoli. This stuff is going to be great. Now we have 3 stems, and we're not going to let these stems go to waste. We're actually going to cut these up into small pieces, and we're just going to throw them in there with the rest of the broccoli. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and heat up our saucepan so we can throw the broccoli in there. Now that I've got the water boiling, I'm going to bring it down to a simmer. I'm going to turn down the heat so that it stops boiling and it sort of just has this rolling motion where you got bubbles coming up, but the bubbles aren't necessarily coming all the way up to the surface. Luckily, I've got a gas stove, so when I change the temperature, the reaction to the temperature change is almost immediate. If you have an electric stove, this is a little bit more difficult, and you might have to practice a little bit with boiling your water to make sure that you can get it to a simmer without having it boil too much. Now I've measured my rice using the same cup as I measured the water, but instead of doing 2 cups of rice, I'm doing 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. Now I'm going to take my rice and I'm just going to dump it in there. And I'm going to take my salt, I'm going to take off the lid so I can get in there. And I could measure out a half a tablespoon with this by going about half of a tablespoon, maybe a little bit less than that. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit in there on my own, and then I'm going to taste the water. And that's just right. And I'm going to add about a stick's worth of cinnamon And my cinnamon's all broken up into pieces, but that's fine. We'll be able to fish that out when the rice is done. When I add my cardamom pods, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3 of them. But I'm going to crack them open first by just squeezing on them a little bit to let all that flavor seep out into the water. Same for all 3 cardamom pods, just so that the flavor can seep out into the water. And these will float to the top and they'll stay on the top as the rice cooks. If the bubbles start rising to the top, I just take the lid off a little bit and let them pop, and then let it sit for a little bit more until I have to take the lid off. If the bubbles get to be too much, you can crack the lid like this, and the bubbles will not be as big, but you will maybe have to take the lid off a couple times in order to get the bubbles to go back down. So I've brought my broccoli over to the back over here, and I think I've got my saucepan up to the right temperature. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my water, I'm going to pour a little bit on there, and see how it's bubbling pretty vigorously? I don't want that. I want it to be slightly less than that. The water is going to help cool down the pan so it gets to the right temperature. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the broccoli right on top of that. Before I put the lid on, I'm going to add a little bit more water. And what the water does is it prevents the bottom of the broccoli from burning. And when I put the lid on, this traps some of the heat and it traps some of the moisture so that the broccoli sort of steams itself. This is a lot of broccoli, and this isn't a very good seal, but as the broccoli cooks, it should condense a little bit. After a ton of waiting, it looks like the broccoli has reduced down enough so that I can move it around with the spatula. Now, if you don't have a spatula, that's fine. You can use a spoon or a fork, but you just want to rotate the vegetables a little bit to make sure that they get evenly steamed. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of salt to this broccoli to help it break down a little bit more. And this will also bring out some of the flavor of the spices that I'm about to put in there. You don't want to add too much salt, but don't be too stingy with it. Now we've been cooking the rice for a little bit, and if we look down in here, it looks like the rice is still pretty nice and fluffy. And if we taste it a little bit, yeah, it's not too bad. It's cooked all the way through. We've got the cardamom pods on top. Some of the cinnamon has seeped into the rice, but that's okay. The cinnamon is pretty chewy. If you have a cinnamon stick, this will not be an issue. I've taken the lid off and I'm letting some of the steam escape so that it can be nice and fluffy and it's not too wet. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat and leave it uncovered for a couple minutes, but then I'm going to put the lid back on so it doesn't dry out. Now I switch places again and I'm about to check up on this broccoli. It looks like this broccoli is the texture that I prefer. It's a little bit crunchy, but it's not too crunchy. It's got a little bit of a snap to it. And it's cooked all the way through, so it's not too hard. It's not too snappy. Alright. Yeah, this looks perfect. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat and cover it up again so it doesn't dry out. Now the other thing I've added is cayenne pepper. And this stuff is a little bit spicy. If I was making this food for just myself, I would have used a lot more cayenne pepper. I love spicy food. That's okay. I'm sharing this with my roommate, and he likes spicy food, but not quite as much as I do. And we're gonna top this off with a little bit of hot sauce when we put it in our bowls. So I decided to go a little bit easier on the cayenne than I normally would. Alright, so it's come time to serve the food. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my bowl, fill it up with a little bit of rice, put the broccoli on top, and then I'm gonna top it with either some soy sauce or maybe some sriracha. I'm not sure what I'm feeling. I think I might do sriracha. So this is what it looks like. It looks pretty good. I'm gonna add a little bit of black pepper on top, and I'm gonna top it off with some sriracha. All right, guys, enjoy.
Like I've never taken a bite like that before. You see my eyes are starting to tear up.